All right. All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting. Really appreciate everyone giving us a little grace as we start this meeting. We are making some arrangements for Spanish interpretation. We did receive a request, and I believe we just heard from our interpreter that we had some misfunctions with our Zoom. So our interpretation function in Zoom is not currently working. So we are being a little creative and trying to find a great solution so that everyone can receive this information in the language that they prefer. So to start today's presentation off, I'd like to just welcome everyone to the Tri-County RFPQ Pre-Proposer Conference. This is a second of our three-part series. Each of the meetings is repeating the same information, and we will make all of this info available to you at request, and it will be posted. The video itself will be posted on the YouTube page, on the Washington County's YouTube page. So this meeting, as you have joined us, you will automatically be put on mute and your video will be off, but you're still in the meeting, and we encourage participation in today's meeting. And we're going to do that through both the chat function and also the option that you should see above, which will say Q&A. You can click on that. And throughout the meeting, if you hear a point that you need more information on, we would encourage you to go ahead and put your question in the Q&A, and then our panel of experts are going to be actively responding to those questions throughout today's meeting. If you prefer to raise your hand, we will also be paying attention to any raised hands, and I'll go ahead and call your name and ask you to come off of mute and ask your question. So we welcome all in any ways you would like to communicate here tonight, and definitely want to make this meeting as interactive as you can as we present all of this information about the RFPQ today. As I mentioned earlier, and we also heard from our interpreter, Jennifer, who explained that we are asking folks to make that request directly to our interpreter. Jennifer or Josh, you can find them in the chat, and just go ahead and you can actually do a message in the chat, and we'll respond to that. Today's meeting, we will be walking through learning about each of our teams that are here tonight. We have a Washington County team, the Multnomah County team, and the Clackamas County team. We will walk through the RFPQ priorities. We'll spend time talking about the racial equity priorities, answering the question, what does it mean to be a qualified vendor? We'll talk a little bit about the service delivery elements and the components of that, as well as the at the end of the meeting, we'll have extra time for question and answer. All right, with that, I'd like to bring in our first speaker, who I think we're just adding in here, Jess Larson, to just introduce the Washington County team and also introduce a little bit of the night as well. So thank you, Jess, for joining us, and go ahead and unmute yourself and take it away.
Thank you, Ty. Good evening, partners, colleagues. Good to be with you all. My name is Jess Larson. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Supportive Housing Services Program Manager. We're just really excited to be kicking off really this groundbreaking work of coordinating with our partners in Clackamas and Multnomah counties to jointly be procuring your partnership for future contracting through this Tri-County RFPQ. We hope that this process makes it easier for you to do work, to continue doing the great work that you already do in partnership and through contracts with our counties. And we hope this meeting this evening is informative and clarifying for you to help you understand this process and get your questions answered. And if you don't get them answered, we will be here for you, and you'll have contact information for all of us so that we can help answer those questions going forward. Ty, do you want to forward one more slide, and I'll go through the Washington County team. So this is us, and feel free to take down our email addresses. You'll be hearing from many of us this evening. Ty, as you've already met, is our wonderful community engagement coordinator with the Supportive Housing Services team. And Alex Devon unfortunately couldn't join us, but you will be getting to know him well if you are providing services in Washington County, because he leads up our services network and all of the wonderful work with our partners to provide supportive housing services programming. And then Susie will be with us later. She is our purchasing supervisor, Susie Fulcher, and has just really been a great partner and lead for us in bringing this complex procurement process together and making it hopefully as seamless as possible for all of you to participate in. So you'll hear a bit more from me later about our work in Washington County, but that is a brief introduction to our wonderful team. And in fact, there are many, many more of us, but this is the kind of the lead partners on our team that you'll be getting to know through this process. Back to you, Ty.
Great. I'd like to introduce Crystal. Would you like to take on introducing your team? Multnomah County.
Thanks, Ty. Hi, my name is Crystal Otero. I work for the Joint Office of Homeless Services in Multnomah County. And tonight we actually have our interim deputy director here, Joshua Bates. So I'll hand it to him. He'll introduce our team tonight.
Thank you, Crystal. And it's good to see you, Ty. I feel like it's been a while. Hello, everyone. I'm Joshua Bates. I'm the interim deputy director at the Joint Office of Homeless Services. I use he, him, and his pronouns. I'm joined here today with Suneva Bennett, our equity engagement coordinator, Crystal Otero, who is our admin analyst, who is really supporting a huge amount of the supportive housing services work. And then Adam Brown may be joining us later. And to Jess's point, while there's three representatives of the joint office here currently, really the entire joint office plays a crucial part of implementing the supportive housing services program. So while we're sort of the folks here who will be engaging tonight, really when it comes to the entire department and our entire infrastructure, we are all aligned in regards to and committed to implementing and supporting the implementation of the supportive housing services program. So with all of that being said, Ty, I guess you're the MC, so I'll be passing it back over to you.
All right, thank you. Now I'd like to introduce our Clackamas County team, Vahid Brown.
Thank you, Ty. It's good to see everybody. Thanks for having us this evening, and thanks for joining us this evening. I'm going to introduce the Clackamas County team, and I'll reiterate what Jess and Joshua said, that this work is taking a much larger village than that is represented on the screen, but these are some of the key leaders in our team that we'll be working with together as we build this regional system of care. So I'm Vahid, the Supportive Housing Services Program Manager for Clackamas County. And with us this evening is Jamie Stark. She's our lead on contracting and procurement and contract administration. Abby Ahern, who is not with us this evening, is our kind of SHS program lead for policy and data. Ryan Rice is the procurement manager for the finance department of Clackamas County. And Cody Thomas is many things, does so many things for our team, but is a management analyst who helps support the work of supportive housing services. We also have a fantastic team in the Housing Authority implementing the Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance Program. And they are not on the screen, but are invaluable partners in housing the people with our contracted partners in the community. So thanks. I'll give it back to Ty.
All right, great. Thank you so much. We're going to talk a little bit about who should apply to this RFPQ. It's important that we are clear and make sure partners from all 3 counties understand and are receiving clarity on this question, as we have received a number of questions, and we're hoping just up front to kind of summarize that for folks. And if there are further questions, we encourage you to ask more questions for further clarification. Could I ask Crystal, would you like to take the next slide there?
Thank you, Ty. Just to start us off, I want to say that anyone who is interested in applying to the RFPQ should definitely apply. And that includes any organizations that may have not already provided homeless services. So there's no requirement that you've already been doing this type of work to apply. So just want to highlight that. We have many partners across the 3 counties who have been providing services in 1 or more of our counties. This is the first time that we've procured for services across the 3 counties. So this is the first time we've done it. And there are our providers have many questions about, well, what does this mean for my current contracts in the counties I am providing services for or to, or for. So this matrix is meant to address providers that are working with at least 1 county. And I'm going to just talk through it right now. So at the top is related to Washington County. So currently, if your organization is currently qualified for the Washington County SHS services, and that was an RFPQ that happened earlier this year. If you applied and are qualified and your organization answered yes to the joint procurement question, you don't need to apply to this RFPQ unless you want to meet the qualifications for some of the other service components in that original RFPQ. If you applied and you're in the qualified vendor pool for Washington County, but your organization answered no to the joint procurement question, then you may want to consider applying for this RFPQ. Because your organization answered no, that means you're not eligible to contract with Multnomah and Clackamas County under those SHS service components that you're qualified for in Washington County. So in order for you to be eligible for all 3 counties, you will need to reapply. If you're currently contracted for homeless services in Clackamas County and your organization wants to be in a qualified vendor pool that is eligible for supportive housing services contracts for the next 5 years, you should consider applying to this RFPQ. And I'll note here that the RFPQ qualified vendor pool is a new concept in Clackamas County. And so I encourage you to reach out to your contract managers in Clackamas County to talk more about that. But this is a little bit different. So you're not allocated contracts at the beginning. You're in a pool and you're eligible for any contracts that come to that pool. So so it's just a different process. Finally, for Multnomah County, if you're currently qualified in Multnomah County for a specific homeless population, and your organization wants to be in a qualified vendor pool to serve all homeless populations, you'll want to apply to this RFPQ. So current Multnomah County providers do not need to apply to this RFPQ to receive supportive housing services funds. You will receive those through your current contracts, and you likely have already received supportive housing funds this year. This RFPQ allows you to contract with the other 2 counties for any of the service components you qualify for in any service population. So it's a different frame you'll want to consider. So I hope that cleared up some questions, and please feel free to reach out to any of us. I just want to reiterate, this is the first time our 3 counties have come together to do this. And I I speak, at least for myself, when I say I work in Multnomah County and I'm learning more about how Washington County has contracted for services and how Clackamas County has. And so our 3 counties are working to align our processes, and this is the first step. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Crystal. Great. If anyone has any questions right now, you can go ahead and raise your hand and we can maybe address any points that were shared. Otherwise, I'll move on. All right. Great. So just a little background, and speaking directly to the Tri-County RFPQ priorities. This is important to just give you a little history and background, and I'm sure some of you already know. But in May of 2020, voters in Multnomah County, Clackamas County, and Washington County approved the Metro Supportive Housing Services Measure 26-210. It funds a regional supportive housing services program for a 10-year period, after which the measure will go back to voters for renewal. The measure initiates 2 separate taxes, a 1% personal tax on incomes above $125,000 for individuals and for $200,000 for filing jointly, and a 1% business income tax on net income from businesses with gross receipt tax above $5 million. Over the next 10 years, the measure will raise an estimated $2.4 billion for the SHS program and provide services for as many as 5,000 people with complex disabilities that are experiencing prolonged homelessness, and as many as 10,000 households experiencing short-term homelessness or at risk of it. All right, and this is exciting, it's important, it's pivotal, and we are innovating here in the Northwest, and it's one of the largest of its kind. I think we're still claiming to be the largest per capita investment in the nation. All right, I'll turn it over to Crystal.
So the priority populations for the Metro Supportive Housing Services Measure are threefold. So there's an emphasis on ending racial disparities across the region's homeless service continuum. And so Black, Indigenous, Latino, Latina, Asian, Pacific Islanders, immigrants, and refugees are prioritized across our service components to meet the SHS goals to end racial disparities. In addition, there's a split. There's a population A and population B articulated in the measure. So 70% of funds are prioritized for population A, which are people that have disabilities and have experienced chronic homelessness, that's long-term homelessness, and have extremely low incomes. Priority population B is for people experiencing episodic homelessness, literal homelessness, or are at risk of it. And they have, so there's population A and B. So those are the 3 priorities, I guess, for the measure funding. I'll hand it back to you, Ty.
Thank you so much. As we proceed, I'd like to just speak to the diverse range of service providers that we are seeking. Culturally specific organizations, community-based service providers, affordable housing owners and operators, outreach organizations, shelter and transitional housing providers, behavioral health and community health providers, providers of wraparound services and supports, and faith-based organizations. All right, now I'd like to invite each of the leads from each county. We'll have Jess start us off, and then we'll bring in Josh to just speak a little bit to the priorities over the next 1 to 2 years. We'll finish with Vahida as well. Thank you.
Thanks again, Ty and Crystal, for that wonderful warm up. So diving into a little bit, just to create some context for partners and providers out there who might be interested in joining our work in Washington County. Here's a snapshot of where we are so far and what we're building towards over the next 1 to 2 years. So, so far we've launched about $12 million worth of programming between our shelter programs. We have winter shelter and bridge shelter programs that have launched since the start of this program year, and our housing case manager program, which is designed to focus on the population B folks that Crystal was describing, people experiencing prolonged and chronic homelessness with complex disabling conditions who need all those wraparound supports and long-term rent assistance to be stable in housing. So the housing case management program is being operated by 17 of our partners so far, and continuing to grow as we work towards a goal of 500 supportive housing placements in the first year, and ultimately 1,665 supportive housing placements that we will support as a system. So that's where we are so far. But we have lots of growth programmatically still in our future. We are next looking towards expanding programming that is focused on population B. This is often called like a rapid rehousing program or a rapid resolution program. The point being programs that provide supportive case management services for time-based period, along with time-based rent assistance dialed to meet the needs of the households who are being served and help connect them to other supports towards that longer term stability. So those programs will be rolling out this winter and spring with our partners, existing and new, and we'll also be, of course, expanding PSH programming, building-based, site-based programs, looking to partner with affordable housing owners and operators to bring all of those services, the case management, but also the wraparound supports, behavioral health supports, peer supports, and more on site. And so we'll be looking to programmatic expansion through the PSH program. We're also looking to try some innovative approaches, smaller pilot programs that can work towards systems integration, working with our community corrections systems partners and our healthcare systems partners, our mental health systems partners, to co-locate or rather embed housing system navigators in their case management teams to better connect people to housing programs. We're also looking to do some employment training programs specifically geared towards people with lived experience of housing instability and homelessness who are interested in becoming housing case managers or shelter workers themselves, and providing training, supports, mentorship, and paid internships to give them that experience on the job. And then also looking at some direct assistance to individuals who are living with no income while waiting for disability pensions to come through, Social Security or otherwise, and are enrolled in some of our housing programs. So those are some kind of innovative pilot program concepts that we're looking to roll out also this spring. And all of that work is hopefully going to be done in growing partnership with culturally specific organizations. So we are always looking to expand the capacity of and partnership with organizations providing services with specific communities and with culturally specific services. So another area of programmatic expansion that we are really looking forward towards in the coming year or 2 years ahead. So hopefully that's a helpful snapshot of our work in Washington County, and we look forward to hopefully partnering with you on some of those efforts. Over to you, Josh, I think.
Thank you, Jess. So Multnomah County shares many of Washington County's priorities. I think, especially when it comes to expanding our supportive housing units, our focus on culturally specific providers. And so I'm going to dive into the real priority and primary goals, but like also try to build them out in a way that's specific to Multnomah County. So really for the first 1 to 2 years, our goal is to stabilize and expand our systems of care, and do so by incorporating organizations that maybe have not historically been contracted with the Joint Office or have not historically worked in with government, specifically in 3 different areas. One of those are new organizations that have not worked directly in homeless services before, or organizations that actually haven't worked in homeless services before. You know, many of y'all in this room, I'm sure, have been supporting folks that are experiencing homelessness in a multitude of ways that make sense for your organization and your community. And really what we want to do is build partnerships and with y'all to continue to support the work, but also enhance the work in ways that you think is crucial for your community. That kind of leads me into the second part of the expansion, which is specifically with culturally specific organizations. You know, racial disparities are rife across our systems of care, and also disparities along other axes of systems, other axes of oppression, such as ability status, such as sexual orientation, such as being identifying as the LGBTQI2A+ community. And really what we want to do is expand our culturally specific organizations, so that will, or expand our work with culturally specific organizations, so that way we can continue to emphasize the ways that those disparities appear in our system and build strategies that are based in the voices in the communities that know those communities best. And finally, the third area of expansion that we're really trying to focus on in this first 1 to 2 years is partnering and working with behavioral health and addiction recovery services. Beyond that, I would say that we also would like to allocate resources to a COVID-19 recovery plan, focus on supplementing eviction prevention, expanding shelter options, expanding outreach services, and identifying new employment-related investments that will really support folks as they still are reckoning with COVID-19. Beyond all of that, some of the larger goals would be that we have a goal to expand our supportive housing capacity in Multnomah County by about 800 units. The emphasis is on placing people who are experiencing chronic homelessness and involving concurrently with that behavioral health and addiction recovery services. Also, we want to focus on people who have been waiting for a long time on our county's coordinated access list, really starting to work through that list and providing housing for folks that are on that list faster than we currently are. And then once again, we're returning to COVID-19, we want to focus too on people that are currently in COVID-19 motel shelters. So that's really the overarching goals of this first 1 to 2 years. But as I said, this is very much, while this is the way that this will take place in Multnomah County, it's very congruent with the ways that Washington County and Clackamas County are also implementing the Supportive Housing Services program. Thank you, Ty. So now I will pass it to Vahid, right?
Yep, great, thank you.
Yeah, and a lot of ditto from Clackamas County. A lot of the same priorities focus on expansion in the same areas as Jess and Joshua just talked about. Clackamas County's focus in the first, I don't know, now been 5 months of rollout, almost 6, has really just been to kind of launch the Supportive Housing Services program. Emphasis on stabilization of our system, as similar to what Josh mentioned, with a focus on short-term and term-limited investments that were made possible by federal COVID investments in Clackamas County, a large non-congregate shelter system for people experiencing homelessness who are at risk of severe disease from COVID-19. Had lost its FEMA funding at the end of the last year, and SHS program has stabilized that emergency shelter non-congregate system and focused resources with our partners on moving households in kind of short-term COVID-related interventions into permanent housing. We have 5 new program partners in Clackamas County that are helping us to do that work of making sure that those time-limited investments when those funds go away, don't end with those households returning to homelessness or losing their rent assistance in the case of some programs that were simply a year of rent assistance. And of those 5 new partners, 2 of them have not done housing work in Clackamas County before, which is great. So we're focused on expanding our relationships with community-based organizations and especially with culturally specific providers. So those 2 new providers in our system right now are both culturally specific organizations that are helping us to further the work there. I'm going to put something in the chat because all of our priorities and our goals and our kind of investment focuses in the first year or 2 of the program launch are described in our local implementation plan. And I've just put a link to the local implementation plan for Clackamas County in the chat. And that is was a plan that was developed from many months of extensive engagement with our community, with communities of color and with people with lived experience of homelessness to help us craft the priorities for this first phase and the goals. In terms of our priorities for our first couple of years, consistent with things that you've heard from Washington and Clackamas County, we're really focused on building organizational capacity with our provider community, especially with culturally specific providers. So seeking to partner with culturally specific providers to do the housing work and supportive services work in Clackamas County who have not previously worked in the county. Investing in technical assistance, training, infrastructure development, and direct funding of our partners to expand their capacity as we build this much larger system of care in Clackamas County. We're focused also on increasing our emergency shelter capacity. Clackamas County has historically not had any year-round emergency shelter for people experiencing homelessness, aside from veterans, families, and folks fleeing intimate partner violence. So we're working to expand our system of immediate and emergency housing, expanding the wraparound service infrastructure of all kinds, including behavioral health services and addiction recovery services, building out our system of housing placement and housing navigation, and that's currently underway with those 5 new partners that are delivering those programs right now. Really emphasizing increasing every type of outreach in Clackamas County to people experiencing homelessness and who are at risk of experiencing homelessness, with a focus on communities of color and outreach to communities of color in the county. That's a real focus for the next phase of our program expansion, as well as investing in eviction prevention efforts and making sure that we don't have folks that are on the edge falling into homelessness. And those priorities, those investment priorities that are going to guide our work as we move into the next year and this year and the subsequent year are, as I said, listed in our plan. And I think that's it from Clackamas County. I'll give it back to Ty.
All right. Thank you all. Great. I want to move to the Neva Bennett, who will be presenting on the Tri-County racial equity priorities.
Thanks, Ty. Thanks everyone for being here. So just wanted to share some of our racial equity work that we've done through this RFPQ. We have added additional language related to anti-racist service delivery. And we included that language in an effort to more fully articulate what we mean by racial equity. So through this work, we want to make sure that resources are not only targeted to address racial disparities, but services are delivered in an anti-racist manner, regardless of the organization delivering the services. We defined anti-racist services in the RFPQ as addressing and naming racism as a root cause of inequities impacting the lives of people of color, immigrants, refugees, and thus acting from this knowledge, we further the effort to address racism through racially equitable programs and policies. I think folks understand that it is an explicit goal to expand the culturally specific provider network. And to that end, we have listened and heard and responded to feedback from the community to work on reducing barriers for community-based providers to participate in things like RFPQs. So we have added the opportunity for providers to access third-party consultants. These consultants have already been hired, and you can either access a request form through the addenda on the RFPQ listing itself, or email me. And we added this with the understanding how cumbersome RFPQs can be, especially for smaller and emerging organizations who may not have very many staff. And this is also, again, in furtherance of that goal to expand culturally specific provider network, and knowing that if we want to do that, we have to implement some changes that reduce some of the barriers to folks participating in the first place. So that writing consultant will assist folks in drafting proposal responses that articulate your services that your organization offers or would like to offer. Yeah, so thanks everyone for being here. That's all for me.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to invite, I see Shannon Olive, I see you posted in there. If you'd like to raise your hand there, you can come off of mute and ask any questions that you might have. I see you might be a little bit time limited, but I wanted to allow you a chance to present a question if you have one.
Well, I don't have too many questions. My name is Shannon, and I'm the founder and president for Women's First Transition and Referral Center. And we work to serve women transitioning from prison, women in recovery from addiction, and women recovering from other trauma to help them to overcome their obstacles so they too can also become successful and productive women of our society. We focus on primarily Black women, but we are all open to serving women who's seeking a transformation in her life. Our organization, we've been operating for about 4.5 years. We're located in Gresham, Oregon. We've been partnering with Bridges to Change for the last 3.5 years, and we're really excited because we have been able to working to expand our services. Bridges to Change has left us with their building now, so we're looking to expand our services now here at Club Hope to really meet the needs of the women that we're serving. So we provide services. We do peer recovery services. We do women empowerment groups. We also we just opened up a recovery house in June of this year. So we provide opportunities for women to have a place to stay up to 2 years until we can get them into permanent housing after coming out of prison, and also treatment. In that wraparound support services, we are able to facilitate ready to rent, financial literacy, life skills, and then also we was able to connect with Commissioner Udaley's office last year to be able to educate and engage and empower our women about the fair ordinance laws that passed in March of 2020, so that they are able to understand what those laws are as they're looking for their apartments once they go through our program, to be able to understand what those expectations and responsibilities are, so that they can be clear of what they're expected to do when they get moved into their apartments. We have our housing retention worker who also will, once they get placed into housing, she will be working with them 6 months to a year to be able to address any issues and concerns that they may have, so that they are able to be stabilized into their apartments and build up that momentum to just ensure that they're staying in their apartments and they're utilizing the tools and materials that we was able to give them while they were in our program, so that they're not up against any evictions or any obligations that they may have while they're in their apartments.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you,
Oh.
Shannon. I really, really appreciate your comments, and I think you're in the right place. So thank you for joining us here, and we're just excited. It sounds like there's a lot of passion and energy behind your organization, and we really think that you know, organizations that are your type are like right at home here. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to put you back on mute here. But I also want to encourage, if you do have any questions before you leave, we'll drop them in the chat, and we'll try to follow up with you. Okay, thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
All right, and I saw one more question there from Katie. The question was, I'm wondering where the LGBTQAI2S folks fall under the priority list, or if they are included with the equity lens. I would say yes. I think you may have heard from each of our county leadership presentations that they are included in our equity lens. And I know that you know, there's a lot of intersecting you know, disparities that we're addressing here. And you know, although you may have heard some leading with race language in our presentation, that is a priority, but we are not excluding the community, the LGBTQAI2S community at all. They are included. So, and if you need any follow-ups, Katie, we can go ahead and follow up with that question. All right, let's continue on. As Neva mentioned, requests for technical assistance, so a little bit more info here, that can be accessed on the Procure Now site.
And I would just add one thing tied to the last question, that culturally specific services and culturally specific providers does include LGBTQIA. And also just to reiterate Ty's point that intersectionality is a big part of our analysis too of how this work moves forward. But thank you for uplifting that.
Great. I see, Shannon, you had one more question. Go ahead with your question.
So I do. I just wanted to ask, so when we are filling out the RFP, are we, is there, as far as individual applications, is there like a, because I've been working with Alexandria with Washington County, are there partners, or are there people that's connected in those different counties that is there like a network access directory that you can tap into to be able to know what agencies that you can connect with as far as with the application process? Or is it just an individual application that you just apply for the RFP? Or is there a directory where you can go on and be like, I want to connect with this organization that's in these different counties, to be able to know if you're not knowing who is out in these counties that you want to connect with? Or how do you know what agencies is in those counties to be able to connect with? You know what I mean?
I think I think I hear your question. Kind of the two parts. Is there kind of a partnership element of the application or an individual element of the application? And I guess, does anybody want to jump right on that? I would say that the RFPQ is a qualification for your organization, and preceding that, once your organization is qualified, you'll be working with the counties on the contracting process. So we'll get into this a little bit after this presentation. And Shannon, maybe we can do a little follow-up after the meeting to maybe cover some of the areas that you might miss in the meeting. But I will say that we are going to talk a little later on about the work that happens after you qualify. Counties will be making opportunities available via their procurement website, and you'll be eligible. You can respond to those applications, and in some of those applications, it might encourage partnerships with other organizations. So it's more on the contracting side is where the partnerships and the collaboration might happen, but this RFPQ is for your individual organization to qualify.
All right, thanks.
All right, great, thank you. Great question, appreciate that. All right, so here I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to be a qualified vendor. You kind of led me into this, Shannon, so thank you. So qualifying as a vendor is what is happening through this process. We are going through this process to ensure that we have a wide range of providers across our 3 counties. This is not a direct award for contracts. This is a non-competitive process to qualify each individual organization, and qualified vendors will become eligible as one of the pool of providers for the tri-counties. They'll be approved to, and this is an option, of course, and I think Crystal already talked about this a little bit, but you'll be approved to work in both Washington County, Clackamas County, and Multnomah counties. And then your organizations as well will be eligible to be technical assistance providers to other organizations. So you will be qualified. This year's qualification will continue on through March of 2027. So you only have to qualify once, and then you're qualified for all of these opportunities that will come up for the next 5 years. Great, sweet. All right, service delivery. So let me turn it over to, actually, this is me again. So let me speak a little bit about the values elements. So the SHS RFPQ have some core values and principles. It's important as a guide for all of our future work. One of the main foundations is leading with racial equity and working towards racial justice. This is a response to the historical disparities that have existed and persisted. And this measure is leading with race to prioritize addressing those disparities. Culturally specific and culturally responsive services. Wanted to quickly touch on this, and we already spoke a little bit about this, but I wanted to clarify for folks on what is a culturally specific organization. Now, a culturally specific organization demonstrates an organization that demonstrates a deep knowledge of communities that they may be serving by both having a diverse workforce that represents that community, a culture, a pride and of resilience for that community, and being active in addressing the historical racism, the experiences of racism that those communities might have. In terms of a culturally responsive organization, a culturally responsive organization in a multicultural context really is that intersection of both gender, race, class, sexual orientation, religion. In these different axes of identity, a culturally responsive organization will work to address the needs and the barriers, create safety, create belonging, and create a diversified service environment for the needs of the community that are present and that they are serving. Housing first. Now, a housing first model is, very well researched. We are committed to a housing first model in our work and in everything that we do. I don't have a lot more to say on that other than it's one of our key values. We are also, along those lines, developing and addressing the barriers to access of housing. And that is, a key piece to us addressing this homeless crisis more robustly and touching people who may have never been served before. This comes sometimes with feedback that we get from our folks that are on the ground and our service providers, and that's where we get creative. And the supportive housing services measure is that engine for creative solutions. And so we are working to address these barriers through this supportive housing services measure. There are several evidence-based practices that we wanted to highlight. This is not limited to just these two, the harm reduction and the trauma-informed. We obviously will be using many different evidence-based practices, but we wanted to make sure that organizations are also incorporating this harm reduction model and also this trauma-informed model that exists. All right, I'll turn it over to Crystal for the next slide.
Thank you, Ty. I'm Crystal Otero and I'm with Multnomah County. So I'm going to talk about the service components that are that you'll be applying. These are the the qualifications to deliver these services, and it's divided by component. So there are 5 total components in this RFPQ. So if you want to be eligible for all 5, you'll need to submit between a 1 to 2 page response for each component. So often providers may select to apply for 1 or 2 components. So that's what they'll then be eligible to contract for over the next 5 years. So it's something to keep in mind. I'm going to talk through these components, and I just wanted to extend an invitation to some of my colleagues in the other counties just to expand on the different components, how your county is thinking about this, just because we have an opportunity here to relay what we're really envisioning with these components. So just to highlight, there are 5 components. So there's outreach and engagement, shelter and transitional housing, connections to stable housing, supportive housing stabilization services, and wraparound supports. And I'm going to touch on each one now. So the first one is outreach and engagement. So this is typically directed towards people that are currently experiencing homelessness, whether that's literal homelessness or chronic prolonged homelessness. And these services are intended to outreach to people and initiate contact and initiate assistance to the homeless services system. So this component can be as small or as large as your agency wants to provide that service. So if, for example, your organization, provides meals and showers or bus tickets or access to a telephone, collecting mail, but let's say that's just for a handful of people. So maybe 15 or 20 people in your community. This is a component you might want to consider applying to. So some of the other things in this component are emergency shelters, behavioral health and recovery outreach, safety on and off the streets services, and providing basic needs services and supplies. So for example, safety on and off the streets can be survival gear, so tents, sleeping bags. It can also be crisis support. So if somebody needs to leave a situation into another situation. Behavioral health and recovery outreach. This is intended at least to capture outreach teams that are providing crisis intervention with behavioral health events that are taking place in the community. Also to link people who are experiencing homelessness to addiction recovery supports. So to help, let people know what's in the community and bridge them over into either an inpatient or outpatient treatment program. Sometimes that's detox, etc. We'll go on to the next component.
I just wanted to, just back to the last slide, just wanted to highlight that I think for culturally specific organizations, just to highlight this service component as related to a lot of smaller organizations are doing this type of work, especially providing basic needs, including food and hygiene, and also behavioral health also includes culturally specific work in outreach. So just highlighting the service component for folks to think about when they're doing their applications.
Thank you, Suniva. And I just want to mention, you know what, that is a really good add-on. And I want to mention over the last couple of years, I think it's the case in Multnomah County, and I'm imagining it's the same in Washington and Clackamas counties. We've really seen a number of small emerging and established culturally specific organizations really step up to help meet the needs of the COVID-19 pandemic, and maybe taking on food programs, offering survival gear, helping with rent assistance. And we want to really tap into that and bring that in as an element to our service, our network of service providers. So that was a really good call out, Suniva. And then it's going to look different. These services look a little bit different depending on the community that's providing them. So the next component is shelter and transitional housing. And so this is really focused on time limited and emergency housing. And this provides households experiencing homelessness with the interim stability and support, and really prepares them to move on to permanent housing in the community. So this can be in the form of congregate and non-congregate housing. And what that means is like housing in like your individual apartment or room versus housing in a congregate setting, which is like groups of folks either in one house together or even sometimes like in one room, like a large shelter room. Alternative shelters, these currently, like in Multnomah County, we're developing alternative shelters that are outside. They're temporary structures. They're considered villages. So that's another option. And then we touched, sorry, I can't see from my screen and I want to make sure facility-based and also time-limited and emergency housing. And a part of this, right, is transitional housing, which is pretty common in re-entry programs from prison or other institutions, or people that are in recovery from addiction that typically going into a transitional housing program for a period of time while they prepare to move into their own place. So those are also programs we're seeking with this component. And I just want to extend to my colleagues if there was anything they wanted to add here. I guess I'll just say there's no program too small again. So if you're interested in a transitional housing program that serves, 10 people, that would be something I think each county is interested in. So those small programs, they add up and they really can provide really specific services that can meet a specific need.
Thanks, Crystal. And I just saw that Devon raised his hand, so I'm just going to invite you. Go ahead, Devon. I'm going to activate you so you can unmute yourself with your question.
Thank you, Ty. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So I own and operate Pine Street Housing, and we have 5 houses with 31 rooms. How do I get signed up for the one-on-one application? And if I do get signed up, my understanding is this allows me to access people and get referrals to fill the houses, and then also help people out with funding for rental assistance through this program. Or is that wrong?
That is Right. There's a couple different steps in there. So that is right. So this component will allow you to be a part of, you'll be, if you qualify for this component, each county, you'll be eligible to provide these services in each county. The way that those services are delivered, like the types of contracts and the coordination, is a little bit different in each county. In Multnomah County, we have a referral system and a leadership table for people, for representatives from each organization to come together. And that's how referrals are, that referral process is determined. So it's a little bit different in each county. The immediate next steps would be to identify which components you want to apply for. It sounds like your program offers a couple different elements. And then, to email Suniva or to look at the Procure Now website to set up one-to-one application assistance. And then once you qualify, to speak with the program leads in each county about what those next steps might look like. And each county will be procuring for these services over the next few years. So there will be opportunities, in probably the late spring, early summer, and more opportunities as we continue to expand our programs.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Back to our regularly scheduled program.
Ty, could I add something from, and I apologize, I forgot to mention this on the last slide about outreach and engagement, that service component. Thinking about small organizations and organizations in the community that have been connecting with folks during the COVID crisis and make connections with folks experiencing homelessness to resources. The outreach and engagement can also include coordinated entry services. So doing assessments for coordinated entry for basically getting folks onto wait lists and referred to programs that are available to serve people experiencing homelessness. So even if you have a very small organization that does provide some service or even information and referral services to folks who may be experiencing homelessness, this category will also allow qualified applicants to be funded to just do assessments and get folks connected to the housing program.
Great, and it looks like you answered Cameron Foster's question. So thank you for adding that, Vahid.
Yeah, thank you, Vahid. That was great. Thank you. So we covered shelter and transitional housing. We're just giving you a broad overview. There's more details in the RFPQ. And you can, so just want to clarify, this is just a broad overview. It's not limited to these services, but this is an overview of what's sort of possible in that component. So the third component, connections to stable housing. This is the component about rent assistance support. So connections to stable housing is conceived of as a continuum of flexible services to assist households in accessing or retaining stable housing. So the types of services that this component covers are diversion. Diversion is there's somebody who is at risk of homelessness and they seek rent assistance and support services that allows them to go from their current living situation into another living situation without becoming homeless. Sometimes diversion can also be in the form of rent assistance. There's housing navigation and placement. So for people that, for example, are on our coordinated entry list, wait list, and they're needing access to housing, they receive a housing voucher, or they're in a shelter. Housing navigation and placement are the services that help people, get all of their documents in order, locate where their housing is, apply or receive housing vouchers, and, assistance to transition into the unit, furnish the unit, how does this lease work? And, a little bit of case management support at that beginning phase. Rapid rehousing. A lot of times it's called like housing placement. So placement into another housing opportunity in the community. And this is also a time limited housing program, and it's used in some different ways across the 3 counties. And eviction prevention. So eviction prevention is really for that priority population B, although of course some people in that population A will be eligible for these services, but eviction prevention is really in the form of rent assistance, sometimes legal services to address, what the eviction might be. It can also be around diversion. So that's that component. And was there anything my colleagues would like to add here?
Yeah, I see, Jamar, you have a question there for this component section, stable housing. I'm gonna go ahead and activate you. You can unmute and ask a question.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. The part about housing navigation and placement, I'm trying to find out, is there literally someone there? Because with mental health and marginalized community pertaining to education, filling out the applications, is there really someone there that's walking the applicant through the process in Multnomah County? Because that's where I've seen a person for the last 4 years give up because he's been calling and calling and calling, trying to get on a housing list. So he's just stayed in an abandoned house for 4 years. So now I'm here to try to figure out what's really going on with this housing navigation and placement.
So so housing navigation and placement is meant to address the type of scenario you're describing. And I'm sorry to hear about that person. It's not always, it's just not always present in all of the programs that we have. But the intention of that component is to address scenarios like that, to help people, to your point, fill out applications, talk with landlords, work with fair housing. And it's something that we're going to be expanding in Multnomah County and the other 2 counties to help with the placement services and to really increase that efficiency and access to it.
And the other issue is if this person doesn't have a computer or a phone to be able to do that, what is the process in a 70-year-old man trying to get to a place, a location, to give their information that he has from just his regular ID, and that's all he comes with, to be able to get on a housing waiting list? What does that look like?
Yeah, so Jamar, I think that at this conference, we're not quite getting into like individual services. This is more inviting a broad base of organizations that can serve those individuals' needs. I would like to, maybe if we can, follow up with you on kind of responding to some of the specific needs that you have, and I will be committed to that because you got my cell phone, so you know how to reach me. But let's talk right after this, right?
Okay,
and
perfect.
I really appreciate you bringing that point up and sharing that with the audience. I want to turn over to Neva. I see your hands up. Do you want to quickly make a comment and we'll move right along?
Yeah, again, just highlighting this service component for folks. I think it relates to what Crystal and I mentioned earlier about a lot of work that small organizations have done during COVID. So just highlighting the service component in your applications. So especially, I think, around eviction prevention, navigation, diversion, just take a look at the service component when you're filling out your applications.
Great, thank you.
And your organization doesn't need to do all of these services. You can do one element of this service. So if you're just interested, or you just, have capacity for diversion or housing placement, that's fine. But this is the component that service will fall under.
And it looks like we have a lot of questions in this area, so I want to quickly come to one more of our attendees. Linda, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the mic there. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, Linda.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I actually run a rapid rehousing site in Multnomah County, and I would say that, first of all, this feels like, I mean, if you were trying to sell me something right now, I'd already been like, this is too good to be true. So I'm really excited actually about this, because right now it's like a closed circuit. I get the referrals, they send them to me. You know, we have the low bar for, you know, housing first and everything else to make sure everybody gets in off the street. It's families only. But the problem is there's nowhere to send anybody afterwards. So we have them for 2 years. And if in that 2-year time, which was before my time, the folks didn't get the right amount of support and the right amount of services, there is nowhere for them to go after this. And so the funding runs out at 2 years, and then they sit up there and rack a bill. And then my boss says it's time for eviction. So I am really, really hopeful that this is something that's been considered. If someone's already working with the Joint Office of Homeless Services and HUD, and then the funding runs out, how we can you know, coordinate putting them somewhere else, or if they get put into a rapid rehousing site that's not actually a good fit for them. You know, a lot of times it locks them into a 1-year lease, and so you have to have the 1-year lease fulfilled before they'll let them transfer. And I think that's just completely wrong. It sets people up for failure. They either have to ditch the place or continue to live in an unsafe environment that can cause relapsing or other things that are completely not helpful for them. And so I'm hoping that when y'all are, you know, sending this out, that's something you could, you know, consider requesting Multnomah County to drop those mandatory 1-year and or 24-month leases that's focused on the betterment and the preference of what the family or individual needs first. So not all very rapid rehousing or every site works for everyone. So I'm interested in learning out more, and also knowing if, based off what I said, you think I qualify for this.
Yeah, thank you for your comment and your question. Yes, you definitely qualify for this. And so we strongly encourage you to apply to the RFPQ. And in addition, the Joint Office of Homeless Services has a handful of public work groups that are run through a Home for Everyone. And I would recommend that you check those out. We have a housing work group in particular where you might be able to raise some of these concerns. And if your organization currently has a contract with the Joint Office, the service you're contracted for has a leadership table, and that's also an opportunity to bring this up. But broadly speaking, we are prioritizing housing placements for people that are kind of caught in those gaps where a service ends, but they need access to housing. And so we are working on that, but your feedback would be greatly appreciated.
Great, thank you. At this time, let's continue on with the presentation. Crystal, we can move on to the next slide. I know we had a lot of questions in this section, so thank you for those questions. Those are wonderful questions. And I also see some questions that are still in the chat that we're going to come back to here after we finish this section of the presentation. So thank you for adding those questions.
Thanks, Ty. So, the boiler is loud. I don't know if you can hear it. So thank you, Ty. So this is the fourth component, supportive housing stabilization services. And this is so supportive housing is affordable housing combined with ongoing services that are flexible, tenant-based, and voluntary to assist households who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. So we will assist them to achieve the design of the component is to assist people to achieve housing stability. So this can be at a facility-based program, clustered or scattered site. Sorry, I'm reading through this one. There are some particulars here around supportive housing programs in that the housing can be publicly subsidized and affordable or in a private market unit. And sometimes that's described as tenant-based supportive housing or project-based supportive housing. So, and some people here might be familiar with that. Project-based is within an affordable housing unit, and typically that housing voucher is connected to the unit, which might be a little bit of what the last participant was describing, so that the voucher stays in the unit. So if the participant leaves that unit, then they leave that voucher, access to that voucher. Tenant-based is when the voucher goes with the client. So these services can be offered under these different categories. Housing retention. Housing retention is really focused on case management, and it supports people to maintain their housing. And it can be done in a variety of ways, but the focus there is to keep their housing and to help people if they, are not happy with their current situation, to work with them to access something that they are happy and satisfied with, and that they maintain housing throughout that process. Resident services is an on-site component of supportive housing. Resident services typically provides a variety of services to people that are living in that building, and it has to do with all types of things. It can even include like rent assistance. It can help with activities of daily living. It can help link people to behavioral health, addiction recovery, or medical supports. And I think I'm glitching out because it's late in the night. I'm like, and what? So my colleagues, please help me here. The resident services staff coordinate closely with housing retention staff and property management to promote housing stability and retention. So it's really a staff person that helps connect the dots when a participant is sort of at risk of, being asked to leave or eviction. This is a person who helps prevent that. Building operations. So operating subsidies to cover costs related to building operations that are specific to meeting the needs of supportive housing residents, such as 24-hour front desk coverage, enhanced property management, crisis support, hiring maintenance or security staff with social service backgrounds. So these are the costs and services associated with just some additional support and safety measures in these programs, often, requested by participants that are there. Landlord recruitment and support. So this has to do with bringing on more landlords across the region to offer those tenant-based and project-based opportunities for housing. And Vahid, I'm gonna ask you to, I'm phoning a friend here. If you can speak a little bit to the call out here to affordable housing providers and developers.
Yeah, so this is, this RFPQ is a great way for providers of housing, for developers who are nonprofit or even for-profit developers of affordable housing that are bringing units online in the Tri-County region, or who are owners or operators of affordable housing buildings or units in the Tri-County region now. You can get qualified through this RFPQ and receive, in the future, receive support services contracts with the 3 counties. So if you have a tax credit subsidized building, or you're developing one, and it's an affordable unit and it's financed that way to be affordable, but there's not in your project currently any supportive services in the project or on-site case management or housing stabilization services, you will be qualified to receive funding from the supportive housing services programs in the 3-county through this RFPQ. So it's a kind of it's a pretty capacious and large service component, because when I think that mostly when I think of housing stabilization services, I'm thinking of kind of like case management, resident services, and staff, and nonprofits that do that work. But also for housing providers and housing developers, this is an avenue for us to fund you to have an enriched supportive service portfolio in your property.
Thank you, Vahid. And that sort of, some bells went off in my head because, there are a number of programs or a number of housing projects that are getting off the ground right now that have received funding through the Metro Housing Bond or the Portland Housing Bond. And so this allows that so that the bonds allow the housing to be built, and these SHS funds, they're the other half of that. And this allows those projects to have those supportive services on site. So that's where we get that supportive housing program linked up. So you have to have both of those components. Maybe it seemed more brilliant in my head, but I was like, oh yeah. So okay, let's move on.
It's totally coming through clear.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're running a little behind on time. So maybe the next couple of slides we can get through a little bit more quickly. If there are any questions on these 2 slides, go ahead and drop them in the chat and we'll try to respond.
Thank you, Ty. So this is the last service component. This is the wraparound supports, and you can see here, this covers peer support services, and that's a variety of peer support, both behavioral health, addiction recovery, and also peers that have lived experience of homelessness. Benefit navigation and legal services, that's also a pretty broad category applying to Social Security, disability, VA benefits, and legal services can be about, overturning an eviction, dealing with a criminal record, dealing with like back rent, etc. Education, training, and employment. So these services are around preparing participants in housing or even shelter sometimes to access employment opportunities or to return to an educational setting. And finally, health services, and this is pretty broad. So this covers, community-based mental health services, community-based addiction and recovery supports, community health workers, and a lot of those services those CHWs provide, like healing circles, etc. Peer support services, strategies that support harm reduction, healthcare navigation, wellness programs, etc. So if your organization is interested, I encourage you to take a look at the articulation of this component in the RFPQ, because there are a number of other things listed here. This is the broad view of it. And we'll go on to the next slide.
And I could talk to this slide a little bit. So this is an important piece. We want to also highlight that all SHS qualified vendors will be eligible to be peer-to-peer technical assistance to the other qualified vendors. So this is going to be huge for every organization that might have a very specialized skill. You might focus on a culturally specific community, that you may be the only organization in Oregon, because we do have small communities here, really focusing on a community. You may become a technical assistance expert for another organization. So this is sort of the encouragement of the partnerships. I think we heard a little bit about that earlier, of this organizations partnering and working together on things. This is where you will become eligible, where you can You might get a call from Washington County, say, hey, we need you for 6 hours of technical assistance to help out another organization. And that's going to be a feature of this whole SHS qualification process. So your organization will be doing technical assistance, eligibility training, cohort supports. As these build, we haven't talked about cohorts, but we may be developing these over the course of the next 10 years. And so we need folks on deck to support those, and development of educational materials, as well as operational and administrative capacity building support. So just wanted to highlight that. We don't want to spend a lot of time because we're a little bit behind on time, but are there anything else to add on that slide from my colleagues? All right, great, let's move on. And I think we had Susie join us. If you could turn your camera on. If not, I'll go ahead and share the website and try to cover what she was going to cover there. Okay. All right. So can you guys see my the web browser right now? Okay, great. So I just wanted to show you a few things on the website here. So Procure Now is OpenGov. OpenGov is Procure Now. That's one of the important things that we want to express. This website, once you receive the link, go ahead and click on the link. We have, I just want to kind of walk you through the tab so that you can see how this thing functions. The RFPQ will be listed here on the front page, where you can access all the documents. I can go through the whole thing in these tabs here on the left-hand side, with the exhibits, as well as the addendum. Oops. Instructions on how to submit are there. You can download the documents here on this next tab, where you'll see sample contracts from each of our counties. These are just general ideas on contracts. They're not the exact contracts that you may pursue, but we wanted to include these because each of our counties operates slightly differently. And so we want to make sure folks have access to some of those contracting languages and how we operate each as a county. Also here at the end, you'll see the SHS Service Component form. Let me see if we can. Actually, I'm not able to open that right now, but it is a 2-page form, and that you'll want to submit each of your components into this form. There's a 2-page limit. You'll see in this form how you fill it out. And if you have any questions, we're going to have Susie maybe on the hook to receive some of these questions, as I'm kind of filling in for her right now. I'm going to move over to the addendum tab. This is where you might see updates to the RFPQ will be included in this section. If we do make any updates or add any additional documents, you might want to continue to refer back to this addendum. There will be, for example, we put in the technical assistance form. I did see a question earlier today. How do we access, I think Devon might have asked that question. How do we access the technical writing assistance form? It's right there in the addenda. We may have another addition or two in the addenda, so I would say that's a place to continue to check on and get updates from. The question and answer section, you'll see from my account, this is where we will publicly post all questions. You can also submit questions anonymously, and we will respond to them in a timely manner. we welcome all questions. I think from these pre-proposer conferences, all the questions that we've heard from our guests and attendees, we will be posting answers to those as we've given you an official response here verbally, and some of them we've written out, but we'll copy them and make sure that they're all in this question and answer section so everyone has access and everyone can refer to them. So in terms of how do you jump in, how do you submit? See this green button right here? This is where you will start your process of drafting. So you'll have to log in there. It's a quick process to get signed up. But as soon as you jump into the login, you can start the response process, and that will be like your touch for actually starting your work on this project. So let's see here. Are there any questions at this point, or are there any additions that folks can add? And I see maybe Adam. If Adam is here, if there's any Multnomah County specific questions for contracting, we have other experts here. If you want to raise your hand and we can call on you for questions. All right, so Devon, I will make sure that you get a link and everyone will have access to this website. You can search Washington County procurement, and you will find the Procure Now, which is now called OpenGov, in the search. And then once you click on that website, it will have a listing of all the current RFPs, RFPQs, and this one will be titled Tri-County Supportive Housing Services. Jess, go ahead.
And thanks, Ty. I'm putting that in the chat for everybody, that link or the website. But one thing that I learned from Susie, unfortunately, who's not able to be here with us tonight, but I thought was a really helpful piece of advice that she shared yesterday, was don't wait for the last minute. Ultimately, you'll have to put all this stuff into that green button, and it's all due by 4 p.m. on Monday, January 31st, which you can see right there. But, technology has a way of glitching out in the most critical moments. So I thought that was just a helpful piece of feedback she gave to folks yesterday. So I wanted to share that. Plan ahead and get your response entered in a little bit sooner so everything can be sure to go okay. But thanks, Ty. You've done a great job covering for her and walking us through Procure Now /OpenGov. So appreciate you covering.
And I'm sure I missed a lot. I do see a question, will Procure Now allow multiple people from one organization to have logins and work on it collaboratively? So Michelle, I see that question. We're going to follow up with the answer to that question after this because we don't currently have our expert on this here in this meeting. So we're going to be active on making sure we get a response to you. I don't want to guess on that. Okay. Next question, can we download all the questions for preparation before working on the site? I see some head nods.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the attachments in there. So like all of that information that you can scroll through and click on, it's also all available in a PDF in one of those attachments that Ty, and I think it was the exhibits or something. Okay. Yeah, that Tri-County Supportive Housing Services RFPQ, the first attachment, or maybe that one. Yep. So it's all there, and you can, print it out old school and make notes and get ready to submit it into the formal portal when you're ready.
Yeah, great.
Just adding one thing that I learned from Susie yesterday is that you can, submit your application and then make changes to it all the
Crystal, it looks like you just your mic just cut out. So let's come back to you here in just a second. It sounds like I can't hear you.
Make changes up to that 4 p.m. deadline.
Crystal, we only heard about like 4 words. what you said. So maybe you can type it out and put it in the chat so folks got your message there. Great. Okay, great. I'm gonna go now. I'm going to stop sharing. Are there, I do see Linda, you had your hand up again. Would you like to come off a mute and ask your question? Okay, I think Linda maybe had her hand up from earlier, so that's okay. Wonderful. So I'm going to go back to some questions. I'm going to stop sharing screen. This is where we have a chance for broad questions and answers. We have been responding to some of these questions and answers in our Q&A section, and we also tried to sprinkle in answers throughout the meeting. But I did want to come back to a few comments. I saw a comment from Michelle. You had a question about the workforce. Would you like to come off a mute and ask your question about workforce and workforce capacity?
Sure, and Jess actually really answered it. I was just concerned about what was being done, considering that our workforce is in crisis, and if we applied for a grant, got funding, and then had problems hiring it, and meeting the goals of whatever grant we had. So anyway, but it sounds like you guys are well aware of that and working like the rest of us to do the best we can on a local level to address it.
Great, thank you so much. I saw a question there from, I think we answered the question on how you get one-on-one writing technical assistance. We did refer to it. It's in the addenda of the Procure Now site. That can be accessed. And I think we also have Neva Bennett, who's here today, who, if you have further questions on that, you know, if you want more details, I think that was covered in the presentation. I also saw a comment from the Chinese American community. You know, if you have any further questions, we welcome you to come off of mute. It's Ho Chang or Hong Chang, excuse me. Looks like Hong Chang's not here, but I'll just pass along the message that we really appreciate your attendance and thank you for coming tonight. And absolutely, we're in the right place. We're really encouraged to see such a diverse community of folks that participated here tonight. All right. At this time, I'm going to just invite anybody who has any further questions to raise your hand. We can try to get to them. No question too small, no question too big. We'll do the best we can. Okay, great. Well, I just wanted to allow that long part. Oh, I see Vahid, go ahead.
Yeah, there was a question posed by Raina in the Q&A chat, and I said we'll get to it later. So I wanted to make sure that we got to it now because it's later. The question was, in applying to the RFPQ, you become part of the qualified pool of vendors, but it's not. It doesn't lead to a contract. So there's another step, and what's the step? And that was the question. Just wanted to speak a little bit about that from Clackamas County, but it's the same. Well, it's not necessarily identical in all counties, but in all 3 counties, yes, we will have an additional step after the qualified pool is established. So everyone applies to this RFPQ. The successful applicants are qualified. Now they're part of the pool under that service component. And then the next step is that in each of the 3 counties, so I'll speak for Clackamas County, and Jamie can correct me because she is the procurementologist on my team. The next step, we would do an allocation process or a program offer process. So we have identified in our plan and our work to house the people that we need outreach to youth in in Clackamas County who are experiencing homelessness. And so we would look at our outreach and engagement service component. There's that pool of vendors. We would make a program offer, so notify everyone who's qualified. There are funds available for outreach. We're looking to do something specific, or we're looking to do something broad. So there's different ways that we could move into the allocation step. But in this example, we're doing something specific. So all of the qualified vendors in the outreach and engagement pool would receive our outreach, our notice. There's a notice that we have funds available. We're dedicating funds right now to outreach for youth experiencing homelessness. Please give us basically it's a solicitation for bids. Tell us what your approach would be as an organization to meet this need, and maybe a sample budget of how your program would what it would cost. And then we will go through a process that might be a little different county by county. We all have different boards or committees or bodies that evaluate these kinds of things and make a decision or make a recommendation. And then we would move into contract award. So that's very broadly. And that the question is, will that process likely be competitive? Yes, in that sense, there isn't an evaluation when the program offer is made or the allocation process is initiated to the qualified vendors that would be evaluated by a scoring committee or something like that, depending on the county. So, and I don't want to speak overly generally. So if Jess or Crystal or anyone else or Adam want to sort of add the flavor for your counties.
I think you did an excellent job. Thank you, Vahid. It is general and high level, and then gets more specific at the county level. I'll just add on in response to Raina's question: is the process likely to be competitive? I think generally yes, but not always so. Right now, we're doing a funding opportunity for PSH in Washington County that's on an ongoing open basis until we reach a certain amount of capacity that our system needs. So there can be a variety of ways that the funding opportunities are made available. There can be direct awards, there can be RFIs, there can be additional RFPs. So it has a lot to do with the nature of the program need that we're building out, and the availability and the types of service providers available to meet that, or the service providers available to meet that need. So I hope that wasn't clear as mud, but also it's just there's many different answers to that question. Anyone else though? It's a big question. And welcome in, Adam, I see you leaning in if you want to add some narrative here.
No, I think the two of you did a great job. Multnomah County will have a similar approach. There's a lot of work to be done, right? And so this just establishes the pool that we need to get the vendors on board to provide this important work. So our process will look a lot like both Washington and Clackamas County.
Great. Cameron, I see your hand is up. I'm going to come right back to your question. And I see maybe one more question got posted there in the chat. So let's hold off on the questions just for a couple minutes. There's a few more slides I wanted to share with folks because we did just start talking about the next steps after qualification, but we still need to talk a little bit about qualification for just a second, so bear with me. There's two slides I wanted to share on the application components, and we saw a little bit of this in the website on Procure Now and OpenGov. But there's essentially, yeah, these 4 sections, 2 pages each, totally easy. Anybody could do this. So 2-page narrative on organizational mission and capacity. This is where you're really learning about your organization, everything that you do and how you do it on the staff level. You may also include things like your board makeup and other participating partners. Equity inclusion. This is where we're again, we've talked about this pretty extensively tonight, but this is where your organization fits in the equity inclusion. We want to see your lens. We want to see how you work, how you operate, how you incorporate culturally specific services if you do, or culturally responsive services. Service delivery. This is just again, more of a broad overview of the work that you do as an agency, directing in the service deliveries level. On the service delivery components, so I said 2 pages each, but this is actually 2 pages per component. So you're applying for all 5 components, 2 pages each, 10 pages total, right? If you're applying for one, only 2 pages there. So this is where you'll describe your vision, describe your mission on working and developing a program for each of those components. All right, now the evaluation portion of this, this is where the qualification really begins. This is, again, a qualification, not a competitive process. We're really screening folks in. Organizational mission will be scored for 25% of your score. Equity inclusion will be 25%. Service delivery will be 25%, and service components will also get a 25% score. Now the question is, if I apply for 5 different components, is that all, does it all just keep adding up? So if I get a 5-point score on each one of those, or a 25% score on each one of those, does it put me over to 150% or whatever? No, we're only going to score one of your components, or we're going to score each of them individually, but we're going to take your top best score and add that to your overall score. To qualify, you must reach a 70% threshold in total. So if you've already hit that 70% threshold from organizational mission, equity inclusion, and service delivery, then your scores will just continue to add up. So possibly you'll be 100%. We want folks to qualify. That's the point of this. We're not comparing your application to other applications. We're only grading you against yourself. The service component sections, like I said again, I just want to repeat this, that each will be scored individually. Each component will be scored, and we'll take that top score, add it to your total score. All right. And then the RFPQ timeline, so folks know, and again, we're going through this a little bit fast, but we'll make these slides available to everyone to go back to reference. So this is where we're at. December 1st, we released. December 7th, 8th, and January 12th, there will be one more pre-proposal conference. We have a question submission deadline. We'll have all of the questions in on our FAQ section by January 21st, and we'll have all the responses to those questions by January 26th. The January 31st is our deadline for submissions, and February 1st through 28th, that's when the proposals will be evaluated, and then you should be hearing the qualified pool will be posted and made public on March 7th. All right, great. All right, great. So I saw there, Devon had a question. I saw Cameron also had a question. I'm gonna unmute. Go ahead, Devon, you can ask a question, and then Cameron, if you're still available, I'll invite you to ask a question as well, if you'd like.
Hey, Ty, and everybody on the board, thank you for answering my questions and being so thorough. I was trying to get this whole thing kind of like knocked out tonight because, I'll procrastinate and forget to get it done. I already emailed Siniva, Bennett, who was on here earlier to get assistance for one-on-one. I want to make sure that's the person I should be reaching out to for that. So that's first question. And my second question is, well, thank you for helping me post that link for the Tri-County, because I was having the toughest time finding it. But I am also having a tough time finding the proposal content that I need to answer the questions to finish my application. So if you could help me navigate through that, or if I should just wait for Ms. Bennett to help me get there, that's fine as well. But if I can't get that answer, I'll try and get it done tonight.
All right, off to the races. I love it. Neva, do you want to respond real quick. And I also would just say before Neva jumps in, I'd say that Susie Fulcher is also a great reference for you. And I'll drop her email in there with if you have further questions about accessing the website. I know that we went through that fairly fast and she wasn't available today, but I'll encourage everybody to follow up with Susie if you have any website specific questions and technical assistance on that front. I'll turn it over to Neva.
Yeah, so for the just to frame things for everyone, the technical writing assistance is one-on-one with a third-party consultant, and those will begin hopefully on December 15th. They have to be scheduled in advance. They also, just to be clear, they are limited because consultant hours are limited, and so we'll do our best to serve everyone we can, but they will be first come, first serve. So we won't be able to provide technical writing assistance until then. And that request form is an addenda on the Procure Now website, but I can also forward the request form. And I see that I received your email specifically about that, but that technical writing assistance is also to help draft your answers. But if you have questions about the RFPQ, those should be directed to the Q&A section of the listing itself. So these consultants are here to help you draft your responses and capture the services that your organization provides or would like to provide. Just to give you a sense of what that is. And so questions about the RFPQ and the RFPQ questions, and what the RFPQ is asking, those would go to the Q&A section in the RFPQ listing itself on Washington County's portal. So I hope that helps clears up anything that folks are wondering about in terms of that, what that assistance is.
That was helpful. I can't find the Q&A part. I only have that link to the Tri-County page on here. I'm having not like the easiest time navigating this website. So I have to wait till the 15th to where I can apply, or I can register now to get assistance with the writing, because I would like to apply for assistance with the writing now if I can.
Yeah, it sounds like the writing technical assistance will be available on that December 15th. So you're a little bit ahead of the game, Devon. We didn't anticipate folks would be this fast and moving. So, but bear with us. We do want to get to that and make sure that's available to you. So let's do some follow-up after this meeting and make sure you're getting your questions answered. So thank you so much for raising that. And
Okay.
Yeah, and you can make a request to get that. You can make a request for the writing assistance now ahead of time.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Neva, for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I think we have covered all the questions that were asked tonight, and we can now do a quick wrap. I want to invite my colleagues from Multnomah County, if you'd like to just close this out. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming. This has been great. So go ahead and give us a quick close, and we'll be ending the conference here soon.
Thank you, Ty. This is Crystal Otero from Multnomah County, the Joint Offices of Homeless Services. And I just want to express my gratitude for everyone who made time this Wednesday evening to come and hear about this. I think I speak for everyone representing the 3 counties tonight, in that we're very excited to work with new partners to expand our network and to address the crisis of homelessness in our region. So we look forward to partnering with all of you and hope that you complete the RFPQ, and we'll continue to walk this road together. So thank you.
Awesome. Great. I see Raina had lots of great questions. Thanks for dropping those questions in. Appreciate it. Michelle, thanks for your questions. Angela, thanks for your questions. Appreciate it. Devon, you're a go-getter. Thank you. All right.